Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Next Step sessions before you study abroad. My name is Brett Semelsberger. I am currently a senior here at DU, but I am also a study abroad peer advisor. I work in our Office of International Education, and I studied abroad last year in Perth, Australia. I had the best time of my life. But enough about me. You'll hear more about Australia later on in the presentation, I'm sure of it. I just kind of want to cover what we are going to go through today. So first things first, we are going to cover what you should be doing these upcoming months and kind of how you can prepare for studying abroad. So we'll go over health and wellness, budgeting, some academic stuff, logistics, and then we'll also kind of help you prepare about what to expect after you come back abroad. So making sure you have your housing secured, academic planning, kind of transitioning back into DU's atmosphere since you've been gone for 6 months, maybe a year. But yes, we'll get into before, during, and after throughout the presentation. First things first, congratulations. If you are watching this, it probably means that you are studying abroad and you got your acceptance. It's such exciting times ahead. It really, really is. I cannot stress that enough. While it can be overwhelming, it can definitely be stressful, I do just want to encourage you all to enjoy the moment. Know what is to come is magical, it's amazing. And one day you'll look back at your study abroad and think very highly of it. So definitely know all the feelings you are feeling are valid, but definitely try to enjoy yourself because this is going to be a very special next couple of months for you all. And then when it comes to next steps with your program, I kind of just like to emphasize that you are going to be receiving a lot of emails. Emails from your host institution, emails from DU, emails from your OIE advisor, and you are going to be the center of all the conversations that are going on. So like if DU sends you something and your host institution needs to know about it, it's going to be your responsibility to forward that to your host institution. So just make sure you're staying on top of your emails, expecting, all those emails that are kind of coming into you and just making sure whoever needs to know about it is being aware of that. Also, it is pretty critical, in my opinion, to make a plan before you study abroad. And these are kind of just questions to ask yourself during the process. Before you go abroad, you might be kind of talking about finances and scholarships. So if those apply to you and you're interested in them, definitely take a look and kind of ask yourself what tuition would look like from abroad compared to you. And then it is also pretty critical to start thinking about passports and visas. As soon as you get your acceptance, you really should kind of be looking at these. If you don't have a passport now, that is going to be your priority. And then also kind of think about what you should be packing clothing wise. I think it's pretty important to know what hemisphere you're going to be on. Speaking for myself, I was on the southern hemisphere. So when I went to Australia, it was actually the winter time, which is so weird because I left and it was like 90. Then I go to Australia and it's like 40. So definitely just make sure you know what the weather is going to look like the months you are there and you are packing accordingly. And then finally, you might just be asking yourself, are all the classes I'm going to be taking, are they going to count towards my degree audit? Are they going to count towards my major, minor, common core? And if you do want those classes to count towards something specific, making sure you're taking the proactive steps in order to do so. And then while you are abroad, you probably are going to wonder what classes are going to look like or what your study habits are going to look like, and asking yourself kind of what makes you a good student and how you can be proactive in the classroom is something to kind of consider just to make sure you are taking your academics seriously, since this is a academic experience first and foremost. Also, homesickness definitely will probably occur. So I definitely just think finding ways to be or to get ahead of it and kind of know if I do feel homesickness, how can I make myself feel less that way? Maybe it's watching a show that reminds you of home. Maybe it's trying to call your parents once a week. Whatever you can do to kind of prepare yourself for the feeling of homesickness, I definitely highly recommend. And then finally, after, you're probably asking yourself that same question: are the classes I took counting towards my major, minor? And then you're probably also kind of just a little eager to get back to DU's campus, just because you've been gone for a pretty long time, 6 months maybe, and you might just kind of want to know how is the best way to readjust into DU's academic expectations. Before abroad. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so whenever you are going abroad, it is pretty important just to know what classes you should be taking, shouldn't be taking. And I think the best way to go about this is talking to your academic advisor or the registrar's office. While the study abroad office is here to help as much as we can, if you do have like specific questions about what classes you should be taking, or if you need to finish your minor requirement while you're gone, that's going to be all more specific questions for either the registrar's office or your academic advisor. But I think the biggest thing just to kind of do on your own, if you want to be proactive, is just look at your DU degree audits and familiarize yourself with what requirements still need to be met, whether that's AI Society, SI Natural. It's just kind of good to know what classes you should be taking if you want anything to count towards anything specifically. So definitely meet with your academic advisor beforehand just to prepare yourself even better. When it comes to classroom settings, those are going to look so differently depending on what country you're in. You're probably very used to DU's classroom environment, but I can definitely bet that wherever you go, it doesn't really matter where, it is going to look different from DU. So expects different grading systems, expects different rules about attendance, even dress code. I know in Australia, all the professors wore sweatpants, sweatshirts. None of them wore shoes. I repeat, none of them wore shoes, which I thought was a little weird at first, but I just said, hey, I rolled with it. I said, let them do what they want to do. I don't really care. I'm not going to judge them. And that was so different from my friend's experience who went to Germany. He said his professors all wore dresses or like three-piece suits. And even the students that went to class always had khakis or jeans on. And it was almost an event to go to class. So definitely just like know every classroom is going to look different depending on where you are. And the biggest thing I can say is definitely just keep an open mind. Know that you are going into their culture, and this might be typical and traditional for them, even though it isn't for you. So definitely just remember classes can look very differently, and just kind of familiarize yourself with the country as best as you can. I think you can only familiarize yourself so much, but it definitely is kind of just when you are in that country, know that you are the visitor. So definitely just keep an open mind. And yeah, kind of definitely being willing to learn about new experiences, I think is pretty crucial. So when it comes to understanding study abroad costs, the simplest way I kind of like to put it is that whatever you pay at DU for a quarter is roughly what you will pay for a semester abroad. It can be a little more, it can be a little less, but that is roughly what it is going to look like. So it is going to be that DU tuition, housing, tech fee, meals. It also is important to know that all of your financial aid, scholarships, merit-based awards, housing grants also will count towards your tuition. And again, whatever you pay similarly here for a quarter is what you will pay abroad for a semester. The one caveat for that I do want to point out is you can see asterisks next to housing and meals. That is because while most of our programs do include housing, not all of them do. So it is very important to look at your program and see if they offer housing and meals, because if they do not, you will have to pay for that out of pocket and have to arrange that yourself. So that is going to be what tuition looks like. And then it is pretty important also to budget before you go abroad, just because there are going to be some purchases you have to make throughout the process. They're necessary, they're required, you have to do it. One of them is going to be passports. If you don't have a passport already, get it as soon as possible. You can't travel without a passport, so that is definitely going to be kind of forefront in your mind if you don't already have one. Also, if you are not a CGS recipient, the CGS is our Sherrington Global Scholars Benefit, which we will get more into later on in the presentation. But it is just good to know that if you aren't eligible, you will have to pay for a visa and you will have to pay for airfare. So definitely consider those within your budgeting. And then also all the miscellaneous stuff. You might have to have a background check, insurance, photographs for your passport. So anything that is required of you to do, make sure you're considering the finances beforehand, because you do have to pay for these things. Next is going to be financial aid. We have this graphic up here, and I mainly like to point out the difference between DU partner programs and unaffiliated programs. Mainly, I'm going to want to point you to the DU institutional aid. As you can see, it is allowed for DUPPs, but it is not accepted for unaffiliated programs. So tuition between the two is going to look different because one has DU institutional aid while one does not. And then the other is that CGS benefits. Those are only going to apply to our students that are doing DU partner programs and not unaffiliated programs. So definitely just consider your options and know that the finances between the two are going to look differently. Next is knowing the health and wellness of your program before you go abroad. So for many of our programs, they require you to either get an exam or a dental checkup, eye exam. There's a lot of things that might require of you to provide in order to be accepted on campus. If you go to certain countries, you might need to get shots beforehand to make sure you don't get like any sicknesses. But yeah, definitely just be aware of what your program's requirements are and making sure you meet them before you leave. I know for my program, University of Western Australia, all we had to do was provide a note of our primary care physician's information, as well as let them know that we had a physical exam within the past 6 months. If we met both of those, we were good to go. It is just important to note that I did go to Australia. It is a first world country, pretty similar to the US. So definitely know like what the country you're going to requirements are and meeting them beforehand. Next is being safe while you're abroad. This slide is pretty important in my opinion because need to you need to make sure you're safe while you're abroad. And I think one of the first things to do is research the local laws before you go. The two things I kind of like to point out the most are first, alcohol. A lot of countries drinking age is 18, however, not all of them are. I know there are some countries in Asia. I know Japan, the drinking age is 20. So definitely just know what the drinking age is in your country and make sure you are above it if you plan to do it. Also, familiarize yourself with the local customs. Maybe you're going to a country where you don't know anything about it. And if that is the case, I do just recommend you to familiarize yourself with what are some of the traditions, what are some of the local customs, because that will just make you feel more comfortable and confident once you finally get there. And then finally, While it might seem like you aren't a DU student while you're gone, that is not the case. You still are very much a DU student, and the honor code does still apply for you. If you get in trouble while you're abroad, SRR will know about it. So definitely do just know while you aren't physically on our campus, you still are associated with DU. You are kind of representing the University of Denver. So make sure you are just acting mature, responsible, and professional. More information about health and safety. I do like to point out health insurance because most likely your DU insurance won't cover you while you're abroad unless it is an emergency. Any like doctor's visits you need, stuff of that nature, that is not going to be covered by DU. So I think the easiest way to go about this, at least what I did, was enroll in your host institution's insurance plan, whether it's for a year, 6 months. Definitely just do make sure you are insured because I did know a lot of people that had to go to the hospital while they were abroad. And thank goodness they had insurance because if they didn't, it would have been kind of just like a whole process. It would have been very expensive. So yeah, I can't stress enough how important it is to have insurance. And then on the bottom, you see ISOS, which I think is an amazing service. It's kind of like a international hotline that can answer any questions you have about safety in your specific city in the country. So I know like beforehand, before I studied abroad, I called ISOS and I said, hey, I'm going to Perth, Western Australia. I plan to go downtown a lot. Can you just kind of tell me what to watch out for, what to prepare for? What are crime rates like? And they followed up within like a day, answering all the questions I had. So I do remember that they were like, yeah, downtown Perth is pretty known for pickpocketing. So make sure to be on the lookout for that. And that was definitely useful information to have just because I was trying to be as safe as possible, especially being in a country I've never been before. So definitely do call ISOS before you're abroad or even during your abroad stay if you do have like any questions you want answered about health and safety. All right, so I said we will get to the CGS benefit later. Well, that time has arrived. So our Sherrington Global Scholars benefit is going to be a benefit, just like in the title. It is not an application. There's no steps you have to take in order to like be accepted. The only thing that you have to meet is the eligibility requirements. There's going to be three of them. The first one is that you do have to have a 3.0 GPA or above. The second thing is that you have to have 90 credits earned before you study abroad. So that is going to be junior standing at the end of your sophomore year. And then finally, you just have to have good academic and conduct standings, or you have any like probations, anything of that sort. But if you do meet all these eligibility requirements, you automatically qualify. Um, yeah, kind of repeating myself, there is no application. At the end of April, you will receive an email saying, congratulations, you are a CGS recipient, and they will send you all the next step information that applies to you. And when it comes to CGS, the main thing they are going to cover is going to be your airfare funds. They will pay for your flights there and back. And then the second thing the CGS benefit covers is they will reimburse you for those visa applications. And those can get pretty expensive. So this is definitely much appreciated. It's one of the benefits at studying abroad at DU specifically. And know that if you aren't eligible for the CGS benefit, you can still study abroad totally. That is totally okay. You just will have to pay out of pocket for those flights there and back, and you also will not get reimbursed for your visa requirement. So definitely just keep in the back of your head, If you are a recipient, expect an email at the end of April. And if you are not, know that you will have to pay for visas and flights on your own. More information about visas. Yeah, I just think this is very important because you can't stay in a country without a visa. So you are going to want to get on top of that as soon as you get your acceptance. And it is your responsibility at the end of the day to get your visa. We can help as best as we can, but just know that if you do want to study abroad in time, it is going to be a very independent process, making sure you have your visa in your hands, ready to go before you leave. And some helpful trips to keep in the back of your mind when going through the process of ordering a visa is going to be make sure whenever you order it, you track your mail, whether that's using UPS or FedEx. You want to track your mail so you know when the expected arrival date is going to happen. Yeah, because it might be like delayed, it might come earlier than expected. So just being able to track where it is in the world is definitely going to make the process feel less stressful. Also, you have to use the right address. I always recommend that you should probably use the address you plan to be on this summer, just because it can take a while for visas to come, and you would hate for them to send it to someone or send it to a place that you are no longer living at. So yeah, usually I just recommend using the address you use or use the address that you will be at this summer if you do expect to get it around that time. And then finally, try to avoid any international trips while you apply, just because that can kind of funk up your application requirements. It might postpone or delay it. So if you have like any summer trips planned, I just don't recommend going outside of the country, just because once again, it can kind of mess up with the timing of your visa getting to you. Things to consider for your return abroad. Housing. Housing is so important because you have to ensure that when you come back to campus, you have a place to live. So I really do think it is important to get on top of housing as soon as possible, because when it comes to the options, they get fewer and fewer as time goes by. So if you want to ensure that you have housing, try to do it as soon as possible. I'm kind of speaking from my own experience because I did not get housing secured before I went abroad. I had to figure it all out while I was abroad, which was a nightmare because of the time difference. So yeah, just kind of be proactive about making a plan, talk to your friends, talk to your roommates, find out what like the best option for you is. It might be staying on campus. You know, you might live in one of our junior or senior apartments. But you also might think of off-campus apartments. I know Vista is pretty popular. There's other options. There's some townhouses that are available to rent. So whatever you are kind of feeling, go for it. Just make sure you do have a plan. If you are thinking of going the route of living off campus, you are going to want to make sure you find a subletter because you don't want to pay for housing when you aren't even living there. And subletting can get a little bit tricky if you do wait, just because there's a lot of people studying abroad at the same time. Essentially, like most of the sophomore class will be studying abroad. So a lot of people are going to be looking for subletters, and there's not that many people interested in subletting. So if you know, like as soon as you know that you do have an apartment, you're not going to be there, try to find a subletter as soon as possible. If you are thinking of going the on-campus housing, once again, you are going to want to make sure you are doing that as soon as possible because those are on a first-come, first-served basis and are going to be assigned to people based on kind of class year when they do end up submitting their application. So if one of those like third or fourth year apartments are kind of interesting you, definitely look into housing and definitely look into housing yeah, kind of soon, kind of as soon as you get the chance to. I just, again, speaking from my own experience, I definitely know how important it is to have housing when you come back to campus. And if you figure it all out before you go abroad, it'll make studying abroad more fun, more relaxed, and take a little bit of stress off of you. Academic planning after abroad, there are a lot of things to consider based on like classes you took, how they'll come and transfer over. But I mainly like to sum up this slide by saying there are 3 things to remember about academics abroad. The first one is that if you do a DU partner program, so that is all of our programs except for unaffiliated programs. If you do those programs, the classes you take while you're abroad will count towards your DU degree audit. So don't really be worried about like, oh, like, I don't know if I'm going to get credit for that class. If you're doing a DU partner program, the classes you will take, you will get credit for. So I do think you should remember that. Number 2 is that the classes you take while you were abroad will not affect your DU GPA. So if you get like all A's, that's amazing, but it won't impact your GPA. If you get a couple C's, maybe a couple B's, once again, it won't affect your GPA. So a big recommendation I have for everyone listening is look at your GPA beforehand and then look at it afterhand whenever you come back to campus. It should be the same exact thing because the classes you take while you're abroad don't impact the GPA. Finally, number 3 is that our classes or study abroad classes are not pass-fail. That is one of the most misconceptions I hear since working at the study abroad office. A lot of people think they're going to go to class and all they have to do is pass. That is not the case. Most of our programs are going to have letter grades. You still will receive an A, B, C, D, or F. Hopefully not. Yeah, but those letter grades you get aren't going to impact your GPA once again. The only time people are going to like see your study abroad transcript, maybe if you are applying to a master's program, they're probably going to ask for it. Maybe for like specific jobs, they're going to want to have it. But typically, it is kind of going to be on the back end of the stuff. And once again, just know that the 3 things to remember is that the classes you take while you are abroad will count towards your audit. The classes do not affect your GPA, and the classes are not pass-fail. Reverse culture shock after abroad. Reverse culture shock was one of those things to me where I thought it was kind of just like an idea until I actually experienced it was when I believed it was like a real thing. Just because I felt so much reverse culture shock coming back to DU. And it's almost like a indescribable feeling. It's weird to come back to your home country and feel like an outcast or just feel a little like uncomfortable. So definitely just know that all the feelings you have when coming back to the US, they're all valid. Like if you feel a little uncomfortable, a little awkward, know that a lot of other people that are also coming back are also feeling that type of way. So just know it can be a little difficult to come back to America, especially coming back to DU. So just prepare yourself for reverse culture shock because a lot of students do face it once they return. And there are a few things you can do to kind of help the transition process of coming back here. One of which is making a plan to adjust to American academics, specifically, that's a hard word to say, specifically American academics. One of the biggest recommendations I have for you all is whenever you come back to campus, I highly recommend taking 12 credits instead of 16. I just think DU it can be very rigorous. Again, we're on quarter systems and not semesters. I know like for myself, I found classes in Australia to be much easier than here. So it was very overwhelming to come back to campus, be on a 10-week system, learn material, essentially week 1. It's just a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. So yeah, whatever you can do to kind of ease your way back into DU's academics, whether it's taking 12 credits or taking our INTZ 2503 class, Whatever you want to do, I definitely recommend doing it. Also, if you want to stay in touch with your study abroad friends, I definitely recommend doing so. I know it might seem a little hard just because all of it will be virtually, and the time difference can also kind of impact that. But you really will form these almost like family bonds with these people. I mean, you see them 24/7, you're with them for 6 months. It is a process where you really get to learn about these people and grow to love them. So I know it was really hard for me to say goodbye to a lot of my friends while studying abroad, just because they're scattered all over the world. I met some people in Italy. I met some people in Australia, obviously, Singapore, Africa. So if you want to put in an effort to stay in touch, I cannot recommend it more. Finally, I mean, Denver is a wonderful city to live in just generally, but it is also a very diverse and cultured city. So if you're looking to stay in touch with the culture of the country you just came from, definitely go to downtown Denver, and you can definitely find some spots that remind you of France if you went to France, Australia if you went to Australia. Definitely places all over. Just take advantage of Denver because, again, it is a very big city with a lot of different restaurants, a lot of different facilities, and just making yourself feel like you are in that country, even if you left and you're not there anymore. Yeah, so previously I also kind of just mentioned that INTZ 2503 class. It is called Learning to Return. It is going to be a 2 credit class, so just once a week, and it is pretty much dedicated for returning study abroad students. The class itself has very little work. It is more discussion based. There's going to be a project at the end that's very fun to do. I am speaking again from my own experience because I took this class, and I kid you not, it probably was my favorite class I've ever taken at DU. Um, yeah, it was just so fun to get to talk about my experience while also hearing about all my fellow classmates' experiences. Every single week, there is free food. So if you weren't already interested, I definitely think you are now. And every single week, everyone got to order food based on the country they came from. So I know, like, when it was my turn to order, I got barbecue for the whole class because I had a ton of barbecue in Australia, and it kind of just reminds me of that. So definitely look into this class whenever you are coming back to DU's campus, because not only is it a fun class to take, but it also does help you with the transition back into the DU classroom environment. Yeah, so I kind of have nothing but good things to say about this class. It is optional, so you don't have to take it, but definitely just know it is an option for you if you are interested. Resources. So while study abroad can definitely feel lonely and isolating at times, I just want to reemphasize that you are not in this process alone. We are always here to help any questions you have, but there are also a lot of resources you can utilize if you ever have questions that need to be answered. Um, so you can look at the Study Abroad Handbook that is on Canvas for information about like how credits transfer over or questions about safety. Yeah, so definitely check out the Canvas handbook if you haven't already done so. Also, on our website, we have DU Passport, which most of you should be familiar with. Know that that's not going anywhere. It's still there. It's still there for you if you ever have any questions you want to be answered. And then we also do have that study abroad brochure on our website for questions you have. Also, your study abroad program contact, while DU is here to help you through the process, so is your host institution. You are going to be there for 6 months to a year. So they are there for support. They're there to help answer questions about like registration, housing, meals. Know that DU will help you, but your host institution also will have a lot of information and will be able to answer a lot of your questions. Also, we have drop-in advising for all students that have any general questions. If you have specific questions, feel free to come in. We'll answer them as best as we can. But yeah, no appointment is needed. You can come in if the time frame works in your schedule. It is going to be Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 11, as well as 2 to 4 in person on the third floor of the community commons. If you cannot come in person, we do offer virtual visits, same times on Friday, and we also included our Zoom ID if you are interested. But yeah, any questions you have, whether it's just like a quick one question or you have like a list of 7 questions, feel free to come in dropping, and we'll help however we can. That does sum up the presentation. I would just like to thank you all for your time. And the final piece of advice I can give for you all is no, study abroad can definitely be a lot, but it is one of the most magical experiences you will ever have in your life. Enjoy it. I just cannot emphasize that enough. Enjoy studying abroad. While other like outside factors can definitely impact how you're feeling about the process, know that this is such a magical time ahead. You will remember your study abroad experience for the rest of your life. And I'm envious of everyone that is going to get to go because I had such an amazing time and I hope you all will as well. So thank you once again for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.